And welcome back, everybody, to the Law News Network. I'm your host this morning, Rachel Stockman, and we were just watching the Holly Bobo murder trial out of Tennessee, where we were hearing all morning from former TBI agent Terry Dykes. He was the lead case agent in this case, and several bombshells from him regarding who he really believes did this. He has an alternative theory to who killed Holly Bobo, and it is not the defendant who is currently being tried for murder. It is someone who was known in the community as Chester the Molester. He was someone that was actually brought as a witness by the prosecution. And the question now is, did the defense make a good enough case that the jurors are going to believe that it was really this other man who did it? I want to bring in my guest now, Amy Dash, who's also a host here on the Law News Network. Amy, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Rachel.
I can't hear you. Do you mind putting Amy through to me? Hey, Amy. Okay, so this was some bombshell testimony that there could have been, or that this TBI agent, he's now a former TBI agent, believes that somebody else did this.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically what he was saying is that there were several key pieces of evidence that he discovered that led him to this belief. One is that there was a cell phone that pinged in Decatur County around the area. Two, he said he checked out Terry Britt's alibi and didn't match up. And so I think he makes a compelling case. He did some sort of a wiretap. I'm curious where the recording of the wiretap is. And in it, he said that Terry Britt made some statements that he felt indicated that he may have done this.
Okay, so like you said, the guy that this defense witness, who's the former TBI agent that you're seeing there on your screen, is pinning the murder on, or at least strongly believes the murder is Terry Britt, who is a convicted rapist in that community, who was known to stalk women that looked a lot like Holly Bobo. In this case, he talks about on the witness stand how there had been 8 different people who had talked to TBI agents about Terry Britt, basically creeping them out, doing really weird things, and a lot of times his kind of predilection were for blonde, blue-haired women.
Blue-eyed, yeah.
Blonde hair, blue-eyed women, okay?
Much like yourself, Rachel.
No.
Watch out for Chester the Molester. He's coming to a town near you.
I mean, and like you said, they called him Chester the Molester. But is
not a cartoon character, everybody?
No, this is legitimately what they call this man. He is a convicted rapist. He was out in the community.
Why? Why was he out in the community? I don't understand this. A convicted rapist with the name Chester the Molester is roaming the streets? It makes no sense to me.
And it really is out of a movie, but you could also see how if you have a figure like this, right, Amy, that all of a sudden, even if there's other suspects that maybe could be checked into, it would be pretty easy for the cops to just say, well, dang, of course it's Chester the Molester. He likes blonde-haired women with blue eyes.
Yeah, but of course they need direct evidence, so there's the problem right there. I mean, they obviously don't have anything on this guy, and I think there's also more to it because this Dykes guy, who was the former TBI investigator, let's emphasize the word former. He was let go from the department. There was some sort of controversy that we're going to find out about. So he's chasing this other lead of this alternative suspect, Terry Britt. But ultimately, prosecutors don't bring the case against him, and Dykes is no longer with the department. So Amy, what happened there?
So, Amy, that's exactly what I want to know. I want to know why, and if any of our viewers know or our producer, Kathy, knows, why was this TBI agent taken off the case? And then he apparently resigned, and now he's a lawyer in private practice in the area. So I'm sure when the prosecution has their turn, they will absolutely try to get to some of that. Here's another interesting moment, Amy. I don't know if you caught it. It was earlier when this witness, Mr. Dykes, first took the stand. and he talked about the defendant Zachary Adams, and he talked about the other suspects in this case, and he basically blew it off, like almost saying it would be ridiculous to think they did it, and that they were kind of just talking shit. Oh, excuse my language. And that, you know, there was no direct evidence linking them, and their alibis did check out. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, in a sense, that's true. There is no direct evidence linking them. You can contrast what he says with yesterday when there was that cellmate rat who was saying that Zach Adams had talked to him about the story, and even though he didn't think Zach Adams was capable of it, Zach Adams did make some statements to him, according to him, saying that, you know, no weapon, no conviction, and saying that he was involved in some part of the crime, according to his former cellmate. So now we have two diametrically opposed pieces of testimony that the jury's going to have to weigh and decide who do they believe. Obviously, the person who's a former TBI investigator is more credible until we find out from the prosecution why he's a former investigator and was taken off the case.
Yeah,
that might change things.
And that's the lingering question. Again, I apologize for swearing on air. I don't normally do that, but I will add that...
It's a heated case, Rachel.
But
it's got all of our emotions riled up.
It does, and I will add, too, that, you know, this is an internet stream, so a lot of times people say, hey, you should bleep this, our freelance producers that are in the courtroom, because a lot of times we have witnesses that swear on the stand, and it's happened in this case as well, many times, and we don't bleep anything because we're live on the internet. We bring you what goes on in the courtroom, no filter.
I was going to say that you're a lot cleaner than Jason Autry.
Exactly.
Who's calling this poor victim an effing you know what? I won't say the word, but I mean...
You filtered yourself, Amy.
Talk like that about somebody who has been brutally raped and murdered, according to the police.
Okay, so...
And family is following this trial and totally devastated. And he just talked to her like she was talked about her like she was a piece of garbage that could easily be disposed.
It was disgusting. And you know what? How about talking about how people appear on the stand? How did you think that this former GBI agent came off? Because I kind of think that he didn't come off that smooth. Some of his answers were evasive. I wasn't totally convinced by his testimony. What did you think?
Yeah, I think he, like you said, he put some reasonable doubt in our minds, but then it's sort of like he doesn't fill in the blanks. Like he'll give you a piece of information and you want it more to round out the story, and he doesn't have the information.
Yeah,
so
at one point,
we're
Amy,
bits and pieces here, and we can't really put it together.
Right, and at one point they're talking about all of the different potential suspects. I think he must have gone through at least 8 or 9 different people that they originally looked at and they investigated. And several times during that testimony, he said, oh, well, my boss told me I can't repeat why we thought so-and-so was a suspect. Another time he said, well, we ruled that guy out because, well, I can't really say because it's not admissible in court. What the heck is he talking about?
I don't know, but I think the problem here is that Jennifer Thompson, the defense attorney, isn't doing a good job of drawing out the answers or challenging him. In fact, it seems like he and even the judge are sort of bossing Jennifer Thompson around and getting her to cower under the stress of it. And she just seems unorganized and confused. So between trying to listen to what her point is, what is she trying to get out, and listening to his incomplete answers, we're left with nothing. Nothing concrete, at least.
Right, and this is kind of like the perfect witness for a defense attorney. Here you have the lead case agent in the case, in the disappearance of Holly Bobo, saying that prosecutors have the wrong person, basically. This should have been a slam dunk for the defense attorney, but I think you're right, she did meander a little bit, and it made it somewhat hard as jurors or just us as trial watchers to follow.
Yeah, because what she should have done is created this whole conspiracy theory that this investigator is no longer with the department because he was following the actual murderer, according to her. But that didn't fit up with what the police department wanted to go after for some reason. I mean, we see these conspiracy theories all the time. Oh, the police were out to get Zach Adams. That should have been her defense here. And here is a guy from inside the department who can confirm that the evidence did not weigh in favor of bringing Zach Adams up on charges, but it weighed in favor of Terry Britt. And now scare the jury and say, now we've got this convicted rapist out there, serial rapist, who also could be a murderer, and he's on the loose. So if you find Zach Adams guilty, then you're going to leave this dangerous person out on the street. That's what she should have done.
Yes, and I think that she should have gone more over why Mr. Dykes, the former TBI agent, I keep saying that because I used to report in Georgia where they had the GBI, but why he so quickly ruled out the defendant in this case. So he started talking about some of the cell phone pings and how they weren't matching up with Zach Adams' testimony and his alibi, but so much of it was excluded because of objections by the prosecution that it's very hard to piece together exactly why this former TBI agent doesn't think Zachary Adams did it. And the way he said it too, Amy, was like, it's almost laughable that the prosecution is pinning this guy.
Well, that's Jennifer Thompson's fault. I mean, when the prosecution's winning all of their objections, it's because Jennifer Thompson is not acting like a strong attorney here. She's not making the case for why this information needs to be admissible and why we need to hear the testimony. And obviously, like you said, there are compelling reasons why we need this man to finish his sentence and give us that information about her client being excluded right off the bat in his mind. Why can't she make the case to get that information in? Right.
I mean, she got in. He could not have been involved in the kidnapping. And that I'm sorry, I'm reading off my notes from what exactly he said. He talks about alternative suspects, but I want to know exactly why this former investigator thinks that Zach Adams couldn't have done it. I'm not convinced by what he told us. I get this weird molester, Chester the molester guy. You know, he's clearly creepy, and he clearly, I could see why this investigator thought he probably was the one, but so far in his testimony, he hasn't really connected all the dots and still leaves me with a lot of questions in terms of why he ruled out Zach Adams.
Yeah, that's because he's an adverse witness to Jennifer Thompson. He has been resisting her questions, laughing at her questions when she said, oh, do you think that, why did you rule out Natalie Bobo, the mother? And he's like, yeah, the grieving mother, of course, laughing at her. Oh, but are you sure? And she keeps going down that path. And he's like, listen, we have a witness who saw a man take her into the woods. The mother was not a suspect. So she's asking questions that are so silly that he doesn't respect her. And because he doesn't respect her, he's not cooperating with her. So the lawyering here is key.
But just to counter that, Amy, too, I mean, listen, this former investigator is also said some things that kind of just said, really, come on. I mean, at one point, he talked about another detective being absolutely brilliant, who had this brilliant idea when Holly Bobo disappeared to check all the registered sex offenders and see what their alibi was for the day. I mean,
oh yeah, wow.
Doesn't that seem pretty
common? Like
yeah.
Einstein, that's obvious.
Right, that seems totally obvious. So, you know, it kind of goes a little bit to his credibility, too. If he thinks that this is the most brilliant thing in the world to check sex offenders, you know, what exactly was he doing in his investigation, and how carefully was he doing that investigation?
Yeah, exactly. And all the investigations before this one.
Exactly. And I'm hoping, Amy, as you mentioned before, when the prosecution gets their turn to cross-examine this defense witness, we will get out why he resigned from TBI, from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. This investigator, Mr. Dykes, was taken off the case midway, it seems like midway through the case, and shortly after that he resigned. So the question now is, why was he taken off the case? Why did he resign? Hopefully we'll get some answers as we come back from the break. Again,
yeah, I think though also, Rachel, on their side, the defense's side, is that we can't forget that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has been surrounded by controversy, that the district attorney in the area accused them of hiding evidence, covering up evidence, delaying evidence, leaking evidence. So I think no matter what, Zach Adams is going to have an appealable issue if he's convicted, because it seems like the whole TBI investigation was a mess. So we don't know what to believe. We don't know what was tampered with, and we don't know what was pursued in the right way.
and how exactly it was pursued. If you're just joining us here on the Law News Network, we are in a break for the Holly Bobo murder trial that we've been watching live testimony out of Tennessee. We've been hearing from a former GBI investigator who actually was the lead case agent in the Holly Bobo disappearance case. When this all happened, he was taken off the case. We're expected testimony to begin back in that courtroom in the next couple of minutes. Amy's going to stick around hopefully for a few more minutes. In the meantime, in case you all didn't catch all of the testimony from this morning, let's review a bit of what this lead case agent, now former lead case agent, had to say about the investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then again, you were still talking about the cell phone records and with Holly's phone and how you got in the geolocates.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
interrupted you, so can you continue from there?
I don't, we got all our cell phone. So we get all this data. We also had some pings where the Decatur County Sheriff's Department, before I got there, they had already initiated a ping, which a ping is where the cellular provider is sending out a where are you signal to the cellular provider. So we had pings starting at 8:56 that morning. Well, 8:56 they actually had no location for, but we had several pings, maybe 4 or 5 pings that day that told us where her cell phone was within that cellular quadrant. Keep in mind, it tells you the center point. It doesn't tell you anything else. But that's what we had.
Okay. And I'd like to have these two maps just passed up and marked for identification purposes.
The 218, 219 for ID only.
Okay, I want to just pass those to you and see if, do you recognize those as being the maps that were generated by AT&T?
Yes, ma'am. They are very familiar to me.
Okay, and the first one, the one that's actually when you were driving different routes, that's the one we'll have marked with the lower number.
Parsons Area 7.
Okay, is that what it says at the top?
Parsons Area 7/7/2011.
Okay, we'll pass that one first, and then the second
218.
one, what is that one?
This one is a map indicating the coverage of all these towers.
We're not going to show it to the jury just yet, but
Sorry. This is a map showing the overlay of the coverage of the cell towers in Decatur County.
okay, very good. Okay, and at some point, did you all get the cellular telephone records of Mr. Adams?
I believe so.
And in determining whether or not he had an alibi for any of that time, did you make any determination about that?
Well, there was one indication on his cell record that, well, within the tower dumps, that showed at 8:28 a.m. he was hitting off the tower that's in the northeastern portion of Decatur County, which would cover northeastern part where his residence is.
And what time was that?
I believe it was 8:28.
Okay. And then what else did you determine? Did you compare that with something else in order to try to make a determination about his alibi?
Right. His cell phone at 8:28 is hitting off a tower that's several miles from the tower that Holly's cell phone was hitting off at 8:26 a.m. So 2-minute drive time. There's no way that Zach's cell phone could have been where.
Again, I think we're getting into finding
It's outside the jury.
expertise.
Well, but did you use that information then to make determinations in
Yes.
your investigation?
Right.
Okay. And what determination did you make at that time?
I think it's just a backdoor way of trying to get cell phone expert
He's not a
testimony.
cell phone
Somebody's
expert.
not.
Right. But about Mr. Adams' alibi, what determination did you make about his alibi?
The determination I made is that he could not have been involved in the kidnapping.
Okay. And what about Rebecca or did you mention Rebecca Earp earlier, his girlfriend?
Yes,
Okay. And did you speak with her?
I did.
When did you speak with her?
Give me a second, it's a big file. I believe it was, the first time I spoke to her was probably sometime after July the 4th of 2011, because I talked to A-Train on July the 5th, 2011. So as part of...
Nope, you say A-Train. Who are you referring to when you say A-Train?
And welcome back, everybody, to the Law News Network. I've been your host this morning, Rachel Stockman, also editor-in-chief of LawNewz.com. We are on a break in the Holly Bobo murder trial, which is supposed to pick back up in the next few minutes. The minute we see courtroom activity, like we always do, we'll take you live to the courtroom. Right now, you were just listening to some replay testimony of Terry Dykes. This is the critical defense witness in the defense's case. The prosecution wrapped up yesterday, and we're now on the defense's case. Terry Dykes, who is he? He's a former TBI agent who was the lead agent in the case, and he was actually removed from the case and has since resigned and now is in private practice. But Amy Dash here, who is my guest and also a Law News anchor, he has a whole different theory about who killed Holly Bobo.
Yes, he thinks that it's this local guy who is roaming the streets, I have no idea why, with a reputation for raping people, called Chester the Molester. This is his moniker on the streets. So he thinks it's this guy because he actually did do an investigation on this guy, including a wiretap. And he had reason to believe that the guy was in the vicinity from a cell phone ping that he found. He checked out his alibi. It didn't match up. So he has all these reasons to say that he thinks it was him rather than Zach Adams who committed the murder.
And so this is a key witness for the defense. And we were just hearing some testimony from him earlier about why he doesn't think Zachary Adams, the defendant in this case, did it. And that's because he used cell phone data to basically find that Zachary Adams couldn't have done it because the alibi seemed solid. But there's some questions, if you just listen to that soundbite that we replayed, of exactly how the investigator, or I should say former investigator, came to that conclusion. What did you make of that testimony, Amy?
About how he came to say that Zach Adams is, and I think that it's just subjective that he didn't. It doesn't seem like he pursued it as much as he should have, because it seems like he was on Terry Britt, and I'm wondering if him being so gung-ho on Terry Britt being the suspect, is if that's the reason why he was let go from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, and then they decided that somebody else should pursue their leads. Maybe there was some sort of an internal conflict between him and someone else who felt that Zach Adams was more of a suspect than Terry Britt.
And we are getting word, Amy, that court is going back into session. We are working on getting that feed live for you. As soon as we get it, we'll take it live right here on the network. We're expected to see the cross-examination by the prosecution of this defense witness, Terry Dykes. Going to be really interesting because, of course, they're going to try to attack the former TBI agent's credibility, I would assume, and also bring up why he was taken off the case. Guys, in the control room, do we have the feedback in the Holly Bobo murder trial? Okay, we're still working on that. As soon as we get it, we'll bring it right here to the network. And I was just told by the control room